Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Teach, the channel where we talk about all things teaching, specifically in the online teaching space. My name is Zander. I am an online ESL teacher and entrepreneur. We help people in the industry take their careers to the next level. We help people that are just sort of dipping their toes into this industry, help them to launch their careers within the online teaching industry. So thanks so much for joining our session, our interview today. This is episode number 2 of a series of interviews that we will be conducting with people in this space, mostly teachers, hearing their experience, the good and the bad. Also specifically to help people that are considering getting into this online teaching industry, and even for people that are already established in this industry. We share everything so that we can help you to find some loopholes in the industry to take your business to the very next level. And so over the next few weeks, we will be conducting many of these interviews with teachers. We have a very exciting interview also lined up with the owner of an online ESL company based in Japan. That's going to give us sort of a bit of a look behind the curtain, if I can say it like that, to help you as teachers better position yourself in how to apply to these schools, how to make sure that you not only get invited to the interview, but that you actually ace that interview when you get to that point. And so we're really excited about this series of interviews. I'm especially excited about the guest that we have today that I'll introduce in one moment. Earlier today, as I was just sort of reflecting on this session, I came to the realization that actually it was today, exactly 3 years ago, when I taught my very first online lesson, which for those of you who know me was quite a terrifying experience. I remember it was with a student probably about 8 or 9 years old from, I believe it was China. He was 10 minutes late to a 25-minute lesson. And when he finally popped up on screen, I gave it my absolute best introduction that I've ever prepared, only for his mom to jump in and say, listen, my son has no idea what you're saying. And I remember it was absolutely horrible. And after that lesson, I sent my wife a message. I told her, listen, I got to find another job. This is not going to work for me. And I always share this advice with people, but she gave me the best advice that I've received to date in saying that just keep teaching online until you've made back the money that you spent on becoming an online teacher in the first place, which was the exact amount of time for me to go from I hate this job to I'll survive to I absolutely love this job. And that's where I've been for the past 2.5 years. And so welcome once again to our interview. If you have not yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. That really helps the channel a lot in growing and reaching more people. Like the video. And if you are an online teacher, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. Tell us where you are teaching from. If you're looking at becoming an online teacher, feel free to reach out to us in the comments, or my email address will also be in the description of this video, and you're more than welcome to contact me in that way. But with that said, I want to bring onto the screen our special guest for today. Gaby, how are you?
Fine, thanks to you, Zander. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for making time. I know this was quite a daunting thought for you, so
Yes,
I'm very happy to join us today, because I think when I was thinking of the teachers that I wanted to invite to these interviews, I mean, your story is quite an exceptional one in the sense that you literally made a career change. You had I believe it was a full-time job at the time that you got your certificate. And you started doing your certificate, completed that, and the mentorship program with us. And then you started applying, you started teaching after hours on weekends. And that grew, in my opinion, quite quickly to the point where you were able to actually make that decision to quit your job, because you were actually able to completely replace your income and more. But I'll let you tell that story in a moment. So Gaby, I believe it was in 2022 that you made your entrance into this sort of online teaching space. But why don't you go ahead and start off by telling us a bit more about Gaby before online teaching? What were you doing before you endeavored into this space?
Yes, so I used to work full-time in the medical industry. So that would have been the animal medicine. So working in veterinarian clinics as a pet nutritionist, and then also dealing with the clients. So basically reception work and making sure I deal with the clients so that the doctors and the nurses can focus on the patients.
Gotcha. So what's the difference, in your opinion, working with animals and working with people?
I think it's the same, in the sense that my job didn't have to do a lot with the animals. That was the fun part. So that was the playtime, was with the animals. But working with people, especially in a type of customer service, was very challenging. It was very challenging.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more. So you're in this industry, working full time. What leads you to make the decision of, I want to find something else? And why did you choose online teaching specifically?
Yeah, so the main motivator was that my husband is an engineer and he works a lot with the construction industry, so specifically on their type of schedule. So where they would have weekends off and public holidays off, and typically have shut down in Decembers. So that would mean that he would be at home for 2 or 3 weeks in December. So working in an animal clinic is the complete opposite. So we work weekends, you work public holidays, you work Christmas and New Year, especially Christmas and New Year, when people are unfortunately giving some wrong things to their dogs to eat with them on Christmas Day, and especially the fireworks causing a lot of havoc. So Christmas from November to January is typically the busiest time for vets.
Yeah,
so my main, yes, my main,
South Africa is on holiday and you've got to work.
Yes, exactly, yes. So that would have been my main motivator, is to try and find a job that aligns my schedule with my husband's schedule, because typically I would be working and he would be off, or vice versa. So my main objective was to find something that would align with that. And obviously having this problem in South Africa that it's not easy to just find a new job, especially if you're looking for specific hours. So I was discussing this problem with my pastor, and he mentioned your name and that I should speak to you about the TEFL course and the mentorship program. So that's when I spoke to you and went through the course. And in August 2022, I did the mentorship program. So that's when I transitioned into that. But like I said, typically November to January is the worst time in the animal clinic industry. So I didn't want to start teaching until after January. So I kept it on the back burner. I applied to different schools and to Preply specifically, but I didn't realize that I never completed the setup process. So my profile was never live. And by the end of January, when I could finally breathe after being so busy, I realized that I haven't received a single message from students. So I thought it was because my rate was too high. So I went on Preply to try and lower my rate to get some responses. And that's when I realized that I never completed the process. So I think it was a Friday. I completed the process, got my profile live, and before the weekend was past, I was already getting messages and people already booking trial lessons for the next week. So it was the beginning of February 2023, I started my first trials.
So August, you finished the mentorship program. For the next few months, nothing really happens. You're working. You don't know your profile isn't active. You come back in January. You realize it isn't active. You activate it on the Friday, and before the weekend ends, you already have bookings. That's incredible. That's amazing. So tell us a bit about, so how quickly did you grow on Preply specifically, and what hours were you teaching at the time? Because obviously you still had your full-time job as well.
Yes. So my schedule at the clinic was a bit strange or unconventional. So I would typically work from 7 until 12 at the clinic. Then I would have like a break period and then return to work between 3 and 5. So those were typically the clinic's busiest hours, and they needed more staff in that specific time slot. So between 12 and 3, I would rush home, quickly stuff my face with lunch, and then jump on my first lesson, teach until 3 o'clock, go back to work. 5 o'clock, when I come back, my husband would have food ready for me, stuff my face, go straight into the lessons, and then I would typically work until 11 p.m. So I would have about 5 lessons per day. And that was my schedule from February until April, when I realized that there's so many students messaging me and I don't have time for everyone. So that's when I realized I have to make a decision. I either have to stop teaching or I have to switch to full-time. So by the end of April 2023, I started teaching full-time.
At the end of April?
Yes. Okay. So I gave my notice for April, and then at the end of April, I started teaching full-time.
So literally within 3 months, your schedule entirely. And by the time that you had to make that decision, whether to go full-time into teaching or with your previous job, the salary that you were earning from online teaching, was that already on par with what you were earning with your other job, or there was still a bit of headway to make up?
There was still a bit of a gap because I could only teach so many hours per day. So the amount of hours I was able to teach didn't quite match my salary yet, but it was very close. I think it was maybe like 800 Rand difference. So it wasn't such a big difference. So that's why we decided to jump into the deep end and just go for it full time and see where it takes us.
Yeah. And then just without giving specific numbers in terms of your salary, but once you quit your full-time job, started teaching full-time, how much did your income grow in terms of percentage once you actually could open up a full working schedule on Preply?
It was about 50%.
Wow, that's incredible. That is absolutely amazing. What would you say were some of the the changes for you, let's say, in terms of your schedule, in terms of your mood, your mentality, once you've made that jump from, now all of a sudden I'm my own boss. I determine when I work, where I work. What was that whole change for you like?
That was such an amazing change. And I honestly didn't see the change until one of my students in a lesson that we had asked me a random question. We were talking about medicine and doctors. And she asked me, when was the last time I saw a doctor, just as part of the conversation. And I realized that I was typically the person between my husband and I that would exploit our medical aid to the fullest. So usually by October of the year, our medical aid is finished. There's nothing left because I was at the doctor so many times.
Yeah.
And 2023 was the first year that I didn't see a doctor. I didn't even get sick during the winter, like the normal cold, nothing. So that's when I realized that stress can have such a big difference on your immune system. And it was such an amazing realization to see that because I am in charge now, I can choose what my hours are, and the effort that I put in is for my students. It's not for someone else's business.
Yeah.
So that made such a big mental difference in my life.
Yeah. That is absolutely amazing. That's the first time I've ever heard that from a student. I mean, I know for me personally, when I made that jump, I had a huge just mental relief and
Yes.
a lot less stress and anxiety and things like that.
Yes.
But that's and I guess that's often something that many people, they don't even realize it's happening. But obviously, you having that conversation with that student made you realize, oh my goodness, this is actually something really significant. So apart from that, Gaby, tell us a bit more about your first impressions of the industry once you started teaching, the good and the bad.
So my first impression was pure terror. I was so afraid of my first lesson because I used to teach ballroom many years ago, ballroom dancing, and it's so different from having a person in front of you that you can teach and show what to do versus online. So to me, that was such a scary concept, to not be able to physically see the person in front of me and not to be able to use my hands and gestures. So I was terrified. I was completely terrified. But especially through the mentorship program and my wonderful mentor, I was able to get through my first trial and then get through my first lesson and then my first month. And then it just kept getting easier and easier. So the initial panic was definitely there, but it was very surprising to me how natural it became with an industry that I have no previous experience with, no knowledge on, and to just walk into it and become successful.
Exactly. And I still remember when you now mentioned the ballroom dancing, I still remember in the mentorship program, you were like, I have some experience teaching people ballroom dancing. Is this at all relevant to what I'm about to do here? And this is what I always tell people, never disregard anything as completely unrelated to, because somewhere there's some skill you learned in your previous experience that would really make you a good teacher. And you're obviously proof of that, seeing as I had a look at your Preply profile earlier today. I mean, you've got 24 active students, taught over 1,200 lessons, 15 five-star reviews, which is a really incredible job. So really well done for what you're doing. I want to maybe just take a step back and revisit one of the points we discussed earlier about you actually quitting your job after only, was it 3 months,
3 months
of online, quitting your job and then making 50% more than what you made in your previous job. What advice would you give someone that's in, because this is a question I get a lot. This is probably number 2 or 3 question I get is, number 1, can I do this part-time because I work full-time? And how do I go about taking that jump or that leap from I don't have any extra hours to open up. I'm quite filled up. Now I've got to make that decision.
Yes.
What advice would you give people that are in that position?
Honestly, I have to say that my biggest help, because I typically take a long time to process things and to think about things and to weigh the options, the pros and cons list. And it took me a good month of arguing with myself and reasoning, is this a good choice? Should I take the plunge? But the thing that helped me the most, I have to say, is support. So support from mentors, support from my husband to say, no, it's okay. We can do this. Go for it. Like I said, it was absolutely terrifying making that decision, but ultimately the best advice I would give is to say, if this is something that you feel it's a calling almost, it's part of your nature, it's part of your character, and it's something that you feel you can really be good at if you focus all your energy onto it, then I would say absolutely go for it. If there's still a bit of hesitation, then I would also suggest maybe getting some support. Get into the mentorship program, find some people that can guide you step by step through it. Have family members to kind of help you if things work out and if things don't, both ways, to cover all your basics.
Yeah, and obviously to have a plan, right? I mean,
yes, exactly.
you knew like the deficit between what you were earning from your full-time job and what you were earning at that time part-time teaching online was about 800 Rand. And for those people living abroad, that's about what, $50, 50 US dollars today, the deficit. So also you know that maybe I should save up a few months in advance to give me a 2 or 3 month window to actually make up for what I still need. But I think it's very good advice. And I guess for you, that's on the other side of that decision today, you're reaping the benefits, probably both financially and, as you mentioned earlier, mentally, and in terms of your health as well, which is great. So moving on, Gaby, I want to get into a bit of like your students, what you teach. Tell us a bit more about where your students are from, what you teach them mostly, and a bit of your approach to get to a point where you have 24 active students, 15 5-star reviews. Tell us how you did that.
So I only focus on Preply. That's the only platform I'm active on. And I teach English as a conversationalist. So that's having a natural conversation, a comfortable conversation with students. So that looks basically like taking a random topic that they would have a conversation on the street with someone with, taking that topic and kind of preparing for it. So having the conversation before they actually have the conversation in their daily life. So kind of preparing them like a script almost for the type of vocabulary that they would need and the kind of questions that they would need to answer in that type of conversation. So I do focus a lot on letting the students speak as much as possible and kind of just guiding them into a few questions and then having them elaborate on their answers. So my students, I would say, are mostly from Europe, specifically Italy. And then I also do have some South Americans, but they are spread or divided between living in Australia and living in South America.
Wow. Okay. So I want to get back to what you said about you're obviously teaching conversational English, which I think a lot of people, a lot of teachers out there do. And the one thing that I always wonder about or think about is how do you make sure that even though you're just teaching conversational lessons, that the students' English is actually improving, meaning if they make mistakes during the lesson, that those do not go sort of unaddressed at some point. How do you make sure that within that conversation, it actually creates opportunity for students to improve their English, correct mistakes and things like that?
So that all depends on the student. I actually have different approaches to different students. So some of my students prefer I interrupt them immediately and say, sorry, that's not right, or to kind of question them, is this what you mean? So some students prefer if I correct them immediately, but most of my students, I would focus on fluency. So to build confidence in English, I would wait until they've completed their whole sentence or their whole story, and then I would go back and correct some of the minor mistakes. If there really is a big problem that they made, I would typically make notes of it. So as they're talking, I'm writing. And all these notes that I'm taking after the lesson, I would typically give these notes back to the student in the form of a report. Yeah. So then I would tell the student, this is the errors that was present in the lesson, and let's focus on this in our next lesson.
And I actually want to sort of affirm that while I was looking at your profile earlier today on Preply, I read one of your reviews from Pavel, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But he basically writes on your profile, he says, Gaby is a great tutor with a great sense of humor. She's punctual and always prepared for classes. She's nice and engaged in classes. Her classes are a learning space and a place where the student feels comfortable. This is complemented by amazing feedback reports. I sincerely recommend Gaby as a tutor. And I think that is just a testimony. And I think the feedback reports, which is something that you and I have spoken about many times before, it's an exceptional tool for someone who's not an experienced teacher to say, listen, I don't know how to answer you right now, but I can put it in the feedback report. And it's clear from your reviews that your students appreciate that, and you're able to obviously retain them very, very well. So as we wrap up, Gaby, what are your goals as now a full-time, your first full year of online teaching? What are some of your goals for this year?
So my main goal is to keep that relationship with my students and to keep building that relationship, because it's ultimately a relationship, and also to work myself up to a certain rate so I can start decreasing the amount of hours that I'm working per day.
Yeah, and that's a point that when I was looking at your profile today, I'm like, Gaby, you're charging too little. Get that price up. But what is your target price, your ideal hourly rate that you would like to charge?
Ideally, so if I could have the perfect hourly rate, that would be like $20 an hour. Yeah, so that would be my ultimate goal. But I like my students, so I want to work up to that very slowly.
Of course. Yeah, I've actually fallen into the sort of the routine of I'm at a once per year hourly rate increase across the board because I mean, if you look at anything else, things go up once per year. That's just the routine. And so I think playing into that sort of routine right across the world actually is really helpful. And I've seen students receive it very, very well. So I normally set a date. Here's when I want to increase my rate. And obviously you get students that you still have from the moment you started. I mean, to give you an idea, my range of hourly rates from student, like my lowest hourly rate right now is still at $9 per hour, which is a student that's been with me for more than 2 years. And then my highest one is $35 an hour, which I absolutely love that student for obvious reasons. But over time, if you actually just make a habit of it so that your students learn that every single year, Gaby increases her rate by $2, maybe $3, I think eventually that'll get you to the $20 mark that you're looking for. Yeah.
So I focus on new students, increasing my rate for new students, but current students only once a year.
Yeah, that's a great model. That's a very, very good approach. Excellent. Well, Gaby, thanks so much. I think our audience has a lot to take away from this. I know earlier today on our WhatsApp group, that all our teachers are on. They were asking lots of questions about the hourly rate on Preply and things like that. So I hope this conversation was helpful to them. And I want to invite the audience, if you maybe have some questions, you're considering making a career change, quitting your job, you're welcome to contact me. I'm sure I can put you in touch with Gaby, and she can give you some behind the scenes advice on how to do that. Finally, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button, leave some comments in the comment section. I'd be happy to answer all of them personally as well. And then next year, we'll actually talk to someone that also, Gaby, Kobus Botha is also, so he will also be joining us next week telling his story. And I invite all of you to join us for these interviews every single Monday afternoon, South African time. We'll be hosting these interviews with teachers, but we also have some other people, for example, the founder of an online English teaching company based in Japan that will also join us for one of the sessions over the next few weeks. But with that said, Gaby, thank you very much for your time. Do you still have questions for the rest of the day, or you're done for now?
No, I'm done now. Yes, I'm done.
Me too. So enjoy your Monday afternoon. Have a great week, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Zander. Bye-bye.